y'all? Welcome back to Kentucky Fried Wargaming, where two guys who are qualified to talk about anything decide to talk about a game with hard math and chance. I'm Joe.
And I'm John.
And we are going to carry on with our incredible effort to try to start doing video content by doing a faction focus for every faction.
You know, just like sometimes you gotta hop right in. Like you have to go directly into the pool.
Yeah, no like tiptoeing in, you cannonball in the deep end. And that's what we're doing. Because how else are we going to learn how to make videos better if we don't do 27 of them in 4 nights?
Yeah.
I do apologize. We are towards the tail end of our recording session, as you can see as the darkness outside my window that was not there when we started.
Don't worry, I know what's in that darkness. It's
What?
the Deathwatch.
Oh, yes, we are talking about the Deathwatch, which are, I'm going to be very honest with everyone up the front. These videos are kind of shorter, and they're tailored around the idea that you might be a new player to Warhammer 40k, or maybe you're a returning player just trying to get up to speed and maybe pick a faction that might interest you. And right at the start, I want to tell everyone that compared to a lot of what we've talked about previously, Deathwatch is cool, but they're kind of difficult.
Yes.
Like right off the cuff. Before we get into their flavor and like faction rules, I just want to make it known so that, you know, if you're someone who doesn't want that, maybe save you a little bit of time. It's bad
And
for
if you're someone who's looking for a challenge, here you go.
Might be bad for our analytics, but it felt honest, at least. So, Deathwatch, John, who are they, and why aren't they like other Space Marine chapters?
So, the biggest pitch I can give you for Deathwatch is that they're a secret group of Space Marines that work directly for the Inquisition to hunt specifically Xenos. They are not utilized like the Grey Knights to fight demons. They do not hunt down heretics. They specifically hunt Xenos. They sometimes end up in battlefields where fighting Xenos means that demons show up. But they are meant to kill Xenos and aliens. That's what they do. But what makes them unique is that they do not have a gene seed of their own. Instead, all of their members are made from other Space Marine chapters.
Yes.
Everyone is supposed to, if you're in a Space Marine chapter, as part of your tithe, give some of your units, some of your men, over to the Deathwatch to serve for a period of time, and then they leave. Some factions revel in this. They love the idea of them sending heroes to the Deathwatch to fight, earn a name for themselves, and then return with all of the stories and all of the experience to better inform their chapter. Some of them hate it, and it's almost a shame or a punishment. It's varied, right? There's a very deep lore there. It's very exciting, and they're generally made up of these kill teams or small squads of many different chapters to have different tactics to really kind of utilize each other's strengths and weaknesses to take on missions.
Yes.
And then in large-scale battles like we play in this game, those teams coordinate together to kind of do a bunch of like SEAL Team 6 attacks all at the same time in tandem.
Yeah, it's a whole lot of cool like operators doing surgical strike bug hunts. Like,
yeah.
If you're into the movie Aliens rather than Alien, this is for you. Like,
Yes.
you're on a bug hunt, and they're really good at it. And it also does give them a lot of knowledge. They're very good at sort of Rolodexing the information that they gather from all of these aliens. They will dissect them and learn from them, kind of like in an XCOM game, and then they use that in battle, and it will come up over and over.
And sometimes they even steal like their like technology. Like you'll see some of these units, they actively use their technology.
Yeah. It's I gotta say, it's pretty cool. But at the end of the day, they are still Space Marines, which is why actually this is the first one we've talked about where they get 2 army rules. One of the army rules they get is Oath of Moment, which if you've watched any of other Space Marine videos, same thing here. For those of you who might not have watched another one, Oath of Moment is a rule that they get that at the start of your command phase, you get to pick an enemy unit and make an oath that it will die. And then all of your Space Marines and your army get to reroll hits and wounds against that unit to try to bring it down and fulfill the oath. And for these guys, it's easy to see how that's going to be useful for them, considering their sort of surgical nature, where they want to pick a sort of distinct target anyway that they have counter-built for, and then get at it and get the job done. But then we get into their second army rule, and this has a lot of words. It is on the screen. Feel free to read it. But John, summarize it for me.
So it's really a lot of words to say a couple of simple things. Almost all of your squads in this army are going to be mixed. So you might have bikes with infantry, with terminators. And when that happens, you're going to need kind of clarification rules. What toughness do you use? How much do they fit in transports? And this rule, we're not going to completely go through it. You can pause, read it, or go find the article yourself. This is what's going to make it identifiable for you when you're trying to fit yourself into rhinos or impulsors or land raiders or the Corvus Blackstar in this book. You're really going to want to look at that to show. It's not going to impact your mechanical playing of the game all that much, but it matters for list building.
Yeah, it does a lot of cleanup for messy questions that would otherwise come up if the way that you can kind of piece together some of your units here. I think the real bread and butter of the Force, though, is Führer tactics. Well, no, it's mission tactics. Apologies. Führer tactics is one of the options. But that's what I think of when I think of the heart of Deathwatch.
Yes.
It's on the screen. Feel free to read it. But to make it simple, as we've said, they're a very flexible force who comes to battle with a lot of knowledge from your previous engagements. And unlike some other chapters who are maybe a little dogmatic and are scared of new knowledge that they aren't used to, the Deathwatch is not afraid to bring it to bear and will do so every battle that they can. And these tactics are the way that you get to do that. So it is sort of like combat doctrines if you've looked at some other videos, but at the start of your command phase, you could select one of the tactics over there, and until the start of the next command phase, you get its benefit for the whole army. And you got 3 options, each of which helps you take on a different type of target. And the fact that you get to pick it and that it goes off no roll is very good. And you, over time, will get more comfortable about what you need and when. But it's going to take a little bit of time of trial and error to get to grips with, when you're going to want to pick each, because they're one and done. There is some stratagems where you could kind of play with it a bit.
Yeah, this faction really benefits from a lot of repetition, a lot of playing and learning against different types of opponents. It's if you love to hear about all of the factions, this is the army for you, because then you can know exactly what to use for what.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it leans into the idea that they counter build against a particular type of foe, and you could do the same in your list building. Mm-hmm. And if we tried to go through every one of these war scrolls, data sheets, we'd be here a minute. Especially because they're very nitty gritty and nitpicky. We've said it in every video, it would take a while. This would take the longest that we've seen so far.
Oh, for sure.
Because a lot of them are just here is a special rule, and then here are the 5 different things you can piece in here at different amounts to your flavor to suit what you want. So instead, we're just going to pick 2 that we think are representative and that won't give us an aneurysm to talk about. John, what'd you pick?
So what I picked was probably going to be the core, much like a lot of my picks, of your army, right? It's your main identity, it's the main thing. It's the Deathwatch Veterans, right?
Yeah.
A lot of the factions that we've talked about in this series, their units have interesting special abilities, is the reason why you pick the units. Not the case here. What you're taking here is a unit that becomes a Swiss Army knife. It's like the old tactical marines from 6th and 7th edition on steroids. You can pick so many different range weapons, so many different melee weapons in large quantities and varied quantities. you can make the exact squad that you need to fill the role that you need in your list.
Mm-hmm.
That's what this squad does. And because they're battle line, you can bring 6 of them.
Oof.
So it allows you to do some like really fun stuff, but mostly it allows you to pick the different tools you need, because it's mostly a toolkit army, and make iterations of it, right? Like maybe I want 2 melee squads of veterans. Maybe I want 2 elite infantry squads that are there for dealing with like Terminators, like Gravis guys, right? And then maybe you have 2 squads that are just dedicated to hammering into vehicles, completely decimating them. Boom, you got it, right? Or you can just make a bunch of squads of versatile half this, half that squads. There's a ton of options.
It comes down to personal flavor heavily here. So you get to choose. And also, it gives you a little flexibility in your stratagems. There are a number of stratagems here, all of them but one, actually, that say, you know, normally when you activate a stratagem, it says pick a unit, you get a benefit. Here, if you are picking a kill team unit, which this is, you can pick 2 units, and they both get the benefit.
Yeah.
So it really helps your resources go further and get sort of double benefits in multiple places.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why when list building with this force, you really want to think about how am I going to use those stratagems with the people I took. So taking 2, say, Deathwatch Veteran squads that have the same guns, the same, like a recursion effect of like 2 almost identical squads that then work in tandem with that stratagem, you're going to get way more out of them, and it's going to feel really good.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. And to keep the idea rolling that, you know, these people are sort of elite tacticians using their experience to hit harder than they probably otherwise would, you got to have a person to lead them. And for me, the answer to that is the Watchmaster every time. Not only because he has a spear, like a power spear with a machine gun, which is a great reason.
You love spears, Joe. It's fine.
I love spears, and this one's a power spear, and it's got a machine gun on it. So, like, double victories. It's so good. And he swings it pretty hard. I mean, you can look over there. 6 attacks, hitting on 2s, strength 6, AP -2, D3 damage piece. Respectable attack profile. You certainly want to get mixed up in it. And the Watchmaster is sort of like a captain if you're familiar with other Space Marine factions. But his purpose is that he leads these guys into battle, and he is sort of like the Rolodex of knowledge. He's the one who has seen the most and dedicated his life to this position rather than rotating in and out. And with this knowledge, God, he's good. The unit he's attached to, it's just sometimes you look at a scroll and go, wow, that would be useful in a whole lot of situations.
Like, wow, that's like the handle of the Swiss Army knife.
Yes. So his squad is eligible to shoot in charge in a turn in which they advanced or fell back. So they can run in charge or fall back and still shoot. So if he's part of a really, really shooty unit that you have made and you get charged and normally your weapons would be tied up, not with him. Step back, unload, fire anyway. Or if he's in a melee blender unit that you've cooked up, cool, run in charge. Get into the fight, get really, really stuck in. Which is a really nice amount of flexibility, which I think speaks to some of this force. And here's the ability that I think really is just the kick in the teeth on top of a really good war scroll is Watchmaster. Once per battle, after your opponent uses a stratagem, if the Watchmaster is your warlord, and he is almost certainly gonna be your warlord.
Yes, absolutely.
You can use this ability. And until the end of the battle, the stratagem your opponent just tried to use now costs 1 more command point. And that lasts the whole game. So if it's one of their bread and butter stratagems that they were really looking forward to, well, that's unfortunate.
Yep. Command point reroll, cost you 2 now.
Ooh, that's rough. But he's so good. Like, truly, he is so, so good. He hits hard, he's got a lot of tactical flexibility, and he messes with your opponent's plans. And I think that is, I mean, absolutely delightful. However, before we end videos, we like to send y'all away with a piece of practical advice. so that when you go, if you decide this army's for you, you know, you really like the complexity and like 8D chess, that you have some sort of simple, practical piece of advice that you can use to hopefully learn the faction and maybe win a couple of games. So John, what tip would you give budding Deathwatch players?
Don't be scared to take risks. I think this is one of those forces that you play too cagey, like you're incentivized to play cagey. But if you play too cagey, you're going to not pull off the stuff you need to pull off. This is like, it's surgical strikes, it's taking out the things that need to be taken out at the right time with the right stratagems in the right combos. And if you don't pull that trigger when you need to, you're gonna lose units that aren't gonna pull their weight. And when people start trading up on you in this army, you lose.
Yeah.
Like, you really, really got to get in there and just dedicate to the surgical precision bit. Don't send squads that shouldn't be going against things they shouldn't be. If they've already done their job and they've already earned their points and you're doing it because you're trying to enable another squad to do something, that's a choice. That's a tactical move. But if you have a melee squad and you're trying to throw them into a tank that they only wound on 5s, don't be mad when you lose your stuff. Really think about the tool that you've made, and they're using the right tool for the right job. This is the closest we have to a toolkit army for Space Marines. And it shows. And it's also very, very rewarding. It's a very high skill ceiling if you learn how to do it.
It is. And my tip, I think, kind of just preempts yours a little bit. Mine is at list building, not just on the table, but even as early as list building. I mean, as you go through the index releases and you poke through it, you can make an incredible number of variations of the purgation squads, like we've mentioned, with, you know, mixing and matching regular guys and some Gravis dudes and some motorcycle dudes and weird combinations that no other faction in the entire game can do. And that's cool. And then you can even give them wild, wacky weapons, which is also cool. But when you're doing that, have a plan for every single unit you're building when you're in your Mad Scientist workshop. Mm-hmm. Know what you're driving towards at list building. And if you're asking yourself, what is this unit supposed to get on the table and do, and you're not sure, back up, address
Restart the unit
before you get to the table.
Yeah, these are like building lists within lists. Like
there are layers to this. Because if you built
like an onion.
Yeah, if you built an unfortunate unit and you try to follow John's advice and you get to the table, it might be too late. So I would caution you to like really have a plan even earlier.
Like really take your time with this faction. And like if you enjoy list building, like I do, and you enjoy tactical decisions on the table, like I do, you'll love this faction, right? I would play this faction if I didn't already play Gene Stealer Cult. Because this is a Space Marine Gene Stealer Cult.
Mm-hmm.
Enjoy it. Enjoy the list building. Take your time with it. Kind of learn different things. Like maybe sit down with a piece of paper. Draw out your squad and what they do. And then start seeing where that fits in with other squads.
Yeah, and you will kind of figure it out over time at your own pace. But at least if you do that, you're starting off on the right foot to learn a complicated force. For us, we're small-brained, so probably not going to be for us, definitely not for me. But we will use what brain power we have to make more faction focuses, so that if you are not into Deathwatch and you're still looking for a faction, we're here for you, and we'll have some other options that you can peruse on the channel. And if you have some like 8D galaxy brain tournament breaking plan with Deathwatch that we just cannot see, feel free to send it to us on Twitter or Instagram or in the comments, because I'd like to see the new hotness before it hits the tournaments. I'd appreciate it. For now, that's been all of our opinions. Bonafide Kentucky Fried. We'll see you on the next one.